So the shifting norms and values of relationships. And this is the one that, B, when we were talking, I fell out, remember? Traditional
What
courting
happened? What
marriage.
happened? You got to go refresh my memory here to make sure.
The traditional marriage versus the modern marriage,
Oh
right?
man.
Traditional courting and marriage versus that modern marriage. Um, I'm I was just floored. I'm really not a fan of either one of them, to tell you the
Mhm.
truth. I'm a believer that marriage is ordained by God, and I don't want to sound preachy. This isn't a religious show, but I am a believer, and uh, the spiritual marriage is written right there in the Bible how it should work. Traditional marriage, in my opinion, does mirror the spiritual marriage, but it's kind of biased towards men.
Mm.
In my opinion, that's
Okay, give me an
me,
example. Give me
feminist.
an example.
It's a little biased, and
Because I think just the opposite. I think that really the traditional marriage really favors women. But
hmm,
go ahead. I want your opinion on that. I'm curious about that.
I just think that it's designed for it looks like the man goes out and works and he's the provider and the woman stays in the house. And the reason why I don't like that structure is because it evolved into that is the only way. That's the right way. Everything women couldn't work, they had a lot of their rights taken away from them.
Huh.
And I'm going back, years because this traditional marriage has been in existence for a while.
Mhm.
So, when I look back and I'm saying, okay, what about that woman that doesn't want to? She can do more than just manage a house. What
Mhm.
about her dreams and aspirations? There was a time when women couldn't vote. We couldn't work. We were just tied to the house.
Mm.
So, from that perspective, I could see why the feminist movement came out, and things have evolved. Now, I think, it's going too far to the left, but yeah, that's my view on the traditional marriage.
I too am a Christian,
Mhm.
okay, and I'm not a Bible thumping, you know, going to church every Sunday person. I'm not going to be a hypocrite here,
Right.
but from what I've learned is that it's God, man, woman, and child.
Right.
And what we've done over the years, we've kind of blurred everything,
Hmm.
gotten to the point where it's almost like, well, whoever's making the most money or has the most influence, or, we're no longer looking at that structure. And part of the problem is I don't think that men have necessarily been the leaders that they were in the past.
Hmm.
And then also from an economical standpoint, obviously it's a lot more expensive to maintain a household, okay, which has forced women to actually go into the house. I mean, forced women to actually go into the workforce, but it has also caused um, prices to rise, okay, and things to become more expensive. Because if you looked at it 40 years ago, or let's say even 50 years ago, when let's say 60 years ago, let's say in the 1950s, prior to 1960, okay, because the feminist movement started what, in the mid 50s or so, early to mid 50s, somewhere around there, and then it started to take off during the 70s. Um, but if we're looking at, let's say around, mid 50s or so, you really started seeing where the woman stayed at home for the most part. They might have had a profession like maybe working in a school or as a teacher or maybe nursing, those type of jobs, okay? More of in a supportive role. Now you have women who are actually taking on careers, going to college. As we know, most of the people in college right now, I think it's almost up to a 60-40 split where 60% of women are in college as opposed to 40% of men, you know, and they're taking on positions that are allowing them to earn a lot more money. And so with money, I guess, comes more prestige or power or influence or what have you. But I think that that has also impacted the roles that we have, like you were talking about earlier, the traditional roles that we've had in the past.
Right.
And we still need to look at it in terms of, okay, um, we have to have some kind of hierarchy in the household. Okay. Just like when you go to work, and this is one of the things that you see online a lot, you know, where the woman is now going to work along with the man. So now we're on an equal playing field. So the man's coming home and saying, nah, that's not the case. I'm still the man of the house. Okay. So how do we resolve that issue? Because we remember the name of the show is Solutions, Not Just Problems.
Mm.
What is something we need to look at in terms of how to resolve that issue? If let's say a woman's making 100,000, the man's making 60 grand, okay? And she comes in and say, "Hey, I'm the head breadwinner here, so I'm going to be the leader of this family." How do you resolve that issue?
In my opinion, should never be based on money. You got to take that money right off the table. I mean, whatever
Okay.
I make. So me and I'll use myself, my marriage as an example. You know,
Hmm.
money's never an issue. It goes into one pot, and what we both
Okay.
put into that pot contributes to the family or the household as a
Okay.
whole. So it doesn't matter if, you know, my husband brings in 100,000 and I bring in 50,000 or vice versa, right? It's
Okay.
all going into that pot. And here's another thing. When you try to do it that way, well, life's going to teach you differently because over
Hmm.
time, that's changed. So as much as we wanted it to be that way in the beginning, right? It's changed. There's been times in my relationship where I made more money. And so it varies. I think the key is man and woman need to sit down and figure out what works for them. Take the
Hmm.
money off the table
Hmm.
and put things in order that work for them because I don't think there's a blueprint for marriage. You know, it's God didn't really give specifics. You know, it wasn't do this, do that, do this. It was he just gave like an overview, you know, and
Hmm.
I think it we have to fit in there how we fit in and what works best for both that man and woman. I've seen men at home and being the at-home mom and the woman out working and this is 20 years
That,
ago and now
that,
it was rare, right? But that couple that I've seen doing it, it worked for them and they were happy with it. It worked for them. Now no one that wasn't right or wrong, it just worked for them. And you know, so I don't think there's a model for, you know, everybody has to it's not a one size fits all. You got
okay.
to work it out with each other.
So I'm gonna ask you a question right quick. So from a leadership perspective, is there anyone who is the leader of the family? Or is it we just gonna do this all willy-nilly and figure
Oh
it
no,
out?
no, no. From a leadership perspective, like you said, you know, if you're following the scriptural marriage, it's God, man, and woman, and then children, right?
Mhm.
However, um, what if the man's not a leader?
That's where you have some confusion,
Mhm.
and I think that a lot of women look at it like, okay, he's really not a leader. But then you have to think to yourself, did you choose the wrong man? Which is a whole different topic.
Right,
Right?
right,
At the end of the day, if you're choosing a man as a woman, why would you choose anyone who is not a leader?
right, right.
So it really wouldn't make much sense. I'm not a female, but if I were a female, one of the number one things I would be looking at is does he have leadership qualities, along with integrity, morals? Is he going to be a good father to my children?
Right.
All of those things. Is he going to be a good provider, protector? All of that would come into play. Okay. And if that is the case, then naturally, and this is just me, looking at it from a woman's perspective, if that is the case, why wouldn't she see him as being leader of the family? But yeah, you're right. I know women that are in relationships with men who are not leaders.
Hmm.
And that's where the confusion, like I said, comes in.
And what went wrong? Why are we not looking at that as women, you know, as a whole, you know, in general? Why are we not?
Um,
Why do I
because
hear money? Like, you know, he has to make a certain salary as a, you know, as a qualification and not he has provider you know, potential. Or
because I
he
think
has integrity. Wow, he's trustworthy, he's honest. What went
because
wrong?
I think we have an unrealistic expectation of what life is supposed to be about. And I think that we're too busy comparing ourselves to other people's lives who may be quote unquote doing better than we are. Okay. And I don't want to go into biblical terms, but comparing yourself to others is not wise. I believe it's the Apostle Paul that said that. Okay. And so when you're sitting here and you're comparing your husband or your wife to another man or another woman's husband or wife, okay, I don't think that's a good thing to do. And I think that too many of us want to live this lavish lifestyle. We want the $500,000 home. We want the Mercedes and the BMW and the driveway. We want the private school for kids. We want to go on the trips. We want to eat at Ruth Chris. We want all these things, okay? Instead of just saying, hey, how about if we just have a comfortable lifestyle where we have a roof over our head, you know what I'm saying? And we live in a safe environment and we're able to raise our children so that they can have opportunity, moving forward. And I don't think we look at it like that anymore.
Right.
You know, I think we're so busy looking at how people are living on what you just talked about a minute ago, social media.
Yeah,
Okay. And
that
that's
has a
why I
big
think,
part to do with it. 'Cause
yes,
that's all you see on social media.
yes,
This is the
yes,
lifestyle, but there's another life, there's the real lifestyle
yes.
outside of social media.
And this is where going back to what you were talking about earlier, which was the dating, the online dating, okay, becomes so difficult because you've got women out here and men, okay, who are looking at this lifestyle. They're trying to emulate that. And most of us are not in a position financially to be able to
Right,
do that.
right. Not even close.
What happens when you don't have the finances? Okay, what happens then? Now, if you sit there and you say, okay, if he's not making, let's say 60 grand or 80 grand or whatever number it is, and now he's deemed what? A scrub?
Right.
He's not going to be a good provider. You're not going to have that type of lifestyle. And I understand things have become very difficult, from a financial perspective, especially over the past, let's say 10 or 15 years. But what you were talking about earlier, if we take the money and put it into a pot, okay, and we share in that 100% as opposed to what some people are doing right now. This is another topic, which is this 50-50 nonsense, you know, which is each person is going in 50-50. Well, if you're married, okay, in my opinion, it should be 100 and 100.
I'm going to give 100% to my marriage.
Exactly. And I think those are the marriages that are more successful, to be honest with you. So whether you're living on $100,000 a year salary or median income or what do they call it, family income, let's say,
Hmm.
or if you're living on a $250,000 income, family income, you should be able to make it work. Okay, you should find a way to make it work and then get to the point where you're supporting one another to where you're now able to increase that income. Okay, but we're living in a society now where men are expected already to be coming in making 100K plus before they can actually become the leader
Right.
of the family. It's like, so we're basing everything on finances. Okay,
What about the growth? Like, what about the growth in marriage? Marriage is a lifetime. Like people grow. Like you started to say, you need to come together, right?
yes,
Do
yes.
everything you got 100%, but then grow together. Like, it's like we want to be 0 to 100, you know, at the very, it's all about growth and
So
forming
so
that together.
so now we're talking about process.
Hmm.
And we're talking about having to wait and having to be patient and having to come up with a strategy and having to implement the strategy and having to work together. Okay? No, I want this thing to be ready made.
Right.
Come in, we already need to be having the BMW and Mercedes in the driveway with the $500,000 home. We're not going to build up to that. How dare you tell me I got to live in an apartment?
Yeah.
In a neighborhood that's maybe just okay.
Right.
Okay. It's not acceptable to a lot of people. And
Right.
once again, is the problem is that when you're comparing yourself to other people and you're trying to live up to other people's expectations, that's when you run into problems.
Mm.
And one of the things I learned at an early age, Vanessa, and I was just thinking about this today, as early as 10 years old, is I never really gave a damn about what other people were doing with their life. It didn't really
Right.
matter to me.
That's right. When you can get to
That,
that point, just know where your life is going, who you are.
exactly. Exactly.